Welcome to the Hopenning, the place where hope is happening, with your hosts Fran Cadrone and Marina Theron-Monnery. For more information about Fran and Marina, or to apply to be a guest on the show, please go to our website www.hopenning.com. The Hopenning is for informal purposes only and is based on the research of your hosts, Fran and Marina. They, as well as their guests, are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from this podcast, which is not intended to replace any professional medical advice or care by medical professionals you are currently utilizing. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again at our wonderful, wonderful place of hope, the Hopenning, the place where hope is happening. And this is episode 123. And today we are going to talk about ghosting. And I'm going to bring Fran in right away because Fran got with this idea of talking about ghosting. So, Fran, lead the way. Tell us why ghosting.
Well, Marina, in Canada, where we are, it is almost Halloween. So I was thinking, this is the perfect topic for Halloween, although it's not the trick or treat ghosting. It's that other kind of ghosting that has to do with relationships. So, Marina, I don't know if you have ever been ghosted or if you have been the ghostee.
Oh, yeah.
Where,
Both.
yeah, me too. And, there's a lot of psychological stuff in ghosting and why people ghost. So I like to think of ghosting as one person in a relationship abruptly stops communication without letting the other person or people in the relationship know why. So, yes, I have been ghosted, and I have been ghosted at all kinds of times of the year, not just at Halloween. But I think this is a very relevant topic because, all kinds of people can ghost us, and we can ghost ourselves, all kinds of people. From coworkers to colleagues to siblings to family members to friends to lovers. It's a thing. It's a thing that happens. And regardless of how old we are, it continues to happen unless we really look at what's going on in ourselves and perhaps in the other person. So if you want to share a ghosting experience, Marina?
You told me that you want to speak about ghosting. I had a lot of time to contemplate it, and I thought, it's actually quite a complex issue. But I think the most important issue that comes up for me is two things. Number one is whenever in my life I've been ghosted, I've been the recipient of being ghosted. What were the story that I told myself? Because I would internalize it. It took me many years to get to the point where I could say, let it go. It's none of my business, and let it go is incidentally what we spoke about in our previous episode. So that's the one thing. But the other thing is at the times in my life where I felt that ghosting was absolutely necessary, what the circumstances were for that. And then I think these are the two extremes, but there's anything in between. So, yes, being ghosted many, many times in my life. And like you said, through work, through relationships, through friendships, through family, doesn't matter. Even now, as I'm in the middle of organizing our Christmas singing, it's not that I do it deliberately, but I always say working with musicians is like herding cats and sending messages out asking for schedules and then like getting nothing back. It's not necessarily ghosting, but it's yeah. So tell me about your experiences.
I think the first time I was ever ghosted, and we just didn't call it that back in the day.
Yeah.
It was with my first real boyfriend. And I thought I was so in love with him, right? And I didn't hear from him. I would phone him, he wouldn't get back to me, or one of his family members would answer the phone and say that they weren't home. You know the story, right? Some people are covering for him or whatever. And it wasn't until a few days later that I found out through a friend, a mutual friend, that he had broke up with me. So he had broke right? He had broke up with me without telling me. So, I mean, I was so devastated, right? I mean, I must have cried for like 2 weeks. And thank the good Lord, I had a brother who was older and wise. And he told me, Fran, there's so many fish in the sea. You will have many, many opportunities to have better boyfriends than that. But at the time, it felt like the end of the world.
Right.
And of
Right.
oh, and of course, I felt like I was the one to blame, right? I
Yes, exactly.
I wasn't fun enough. I wasn't pretty
Hmm.
enough. I wasn't, the list is endless of the reasons that we create in our heads
Hmm.
about why this would have happened. And at that time, I didn't have the experience to understand that whole scenario. And as you go through life, you begin to understand better human behavior. So I think the number one reason that people ghost is fear of confrontation. So I'm not saying that this boyfriend was afraid of me making a scene, but I think that he was really afraid to hurt my feelings by breaking up with me face to face. So he ghosted me. Um, in your experience, Marina, what do you find? What did you find was the number one
Well,
reason?
Fran, it makes me go back in my mind to also my early dating years when things like cell phones did not exist, and so I guess to find out via the grapevine um, is kind of a difficult situation. But when people just never respond and kind of lead you on up to a way and they never respond. But I think mostly in my younger years, my teenage year happened with friends who just would not invite me to things. And again, that's before the days of cell phones. Now, today, we are in a different situation. Most people communicate through text messaging. And if, I mean, I have found that even in with clients now, that you start a journey with a client and at some good point they just don't respond anymore, but I don't see that necessarily as ghosting. I just see it that they got from me what they needed, so just let it go. um but yeah, in my younger years, it was probably when there's a lack of clear communication and why a person feel that there's no more room for communication. um it can lead on to be the recipient of the ghosting. It can lead to a lot of misconceptions about yourself. And as you know, those can lead to just so many, like a downward spiral of not feeling good enough.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
I
yes,
agree.
yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah. And you said something that piqued my interest, that texting, the ability now to be able to ignore, ignore text messages or ignore phone calls or block, right? Block phone calls, block um, different social media from certain people. And I think part of that is just this inability to process emotions. So if I was your client, say, or you were my client, and I reached out to I was your therapist and you were my client, and I reached out to you to ask you, how are you doing? How have you been since our last therapy session? And such, and there was no response. I think that there's often a message in there too. Like I I would think that the client may not have been listening to their recording and fell, maybe if they had food issues, that they fell off the wagon again. They're beating themselves up about the lack of being able to be accountable to themselves, and they're feeling this guilt, so they don't want to feel guilt. So blocking me, of or not not engaging with me, so that they don't have to feel guilt or perhaps even shame about their inability to follow through. So I'm not sure if you've ever had an experience like that, Marina, where that's happened to you as well.
Oh, of course, Fran. But I think the key, and maybe on the flip side of ghosting, is how do you not take it personally? I've definitely had it on many levels in my life, even with family members. And how do you not take it personally?
Mhm.
And even one of my children, I know he loves me, but he lives far away, and I would send him a text message, and 9 out of 10 times I would not get a response. And his fiance complains about the same thing. So I'm not the only one. But it's just not his personality. So yeah, I'm very communicative. And but yeah, with clients, I think I've been through enough in my life that I could get to a point where I just detached from the outcome. And I know that they know where to find me if they need more help. I know that. And then sometimes, I have this pattern of when to follow up with them. And if they don't respond the first time, there's always a second time. And I know that once, it was months after I sent a follow-up message to one of my old clients, that she responded. And she said, I just didn't know how to respond to you. And this has changed in my life so dramatically that I couldn't put it into words. And it was just one of the most beautiful feedbacks. So, in the past, I probably would have beat myself up and said, oh, you failed. But I cannot do that anymore. I just cannot do that anymore. I do my best with everything I do. So there are two people involved here. So it's just to have that skill to let it go. It's none of my
Mhm.
business.
And it is a skill. It's a
Yeah.
real skill, and it's conscious effort. And whether we can let it go, if the person who's ghosting is a client, or whether it's a child or a friend. Um, it's interesting. I always, my brothers, because I had so many of them and they were all older than me, they used to say, if this boyfriend was if he really was invested, he'd make the effort. And
Absolutely.
I did take that to heart. If it's not just the boyfriend, right? If this person is really invested, they'll make the effort. Um, so I keep that one in my pocket. I think another reason that people ghost is there's no immediate consequences. So, for example, if we have children that are living a long ways away from us, and my child or your child chooses to not answer a text message or not answer a phone call, there's not an immediate consequence. It's not like I can ground them. I can't ground them anymore, or I can't, send them to their bedroom or those kinds of things. So, I mean, it's like, oh, it's just mom again texting. She can wait because I have this other stuff. I need to finish this project, or I have a commitment to this other person tonight, or we're doing stuff next weekend. So there's no immediate consequence. And I think in some cases, that human, whoever it is, knows that we don't um, withhold our love. So I'm going to love my kids and friends and certain people, regardless of whether they text me back or not. So that immediate consequence is not there because of who I am and the person that I am. I will continue that relationship. And I think that's part of ghosting in general. And it's not an excuse, but it is a reason, I find. Yeah.
So give me an example of when in your life you felt a need to be the ghost.
Yeah. And for me, I feel the need to be a ghost when I fear confrontation. So that's my thing because of my past, of who I am and how I handled things in childhood, my coping mechanisms in childhood. I would just hide, right? I would hide rather than confront. And or I would get somebody else to fight the battle for me, because there were lots of people that were willing to fight the battle for me. And so as a result, I became habitual. I think I'm habitual of where I do, not anymore so much. I try to face my demons because I know that pattern in myself. But yeah, so I will ghost people if I don't want a confrontation. And it could be a date that I've been on once or twice or a few times, and I just don't see it going anywhere. But I don't want to hurt this person's feelings. And so I will ghost. I mean, or I have ghosted for sure. Or sometimes it's when there's too much emotion involved. So if I am so angry at something and I haven't worked through my anger yet, I will ghost until I've processed it enough and worked through my own anger enough to be communicate in a civil way. So
So do you think that is ghosting or just avoidance?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think what's important to do if you know your own pattern like myself is to set a time frame to tell yourself it's okay to be angry. It's okay to avoid confrontation. It's okay to acknowledge who you are, but set a time frame. So, in whatever situation it is, it could be a day or a week or a couple of weeks, that in that time frame you do make the effort to get back to that person and let them know how you're feeling or what's going on with you and the relationship. Mhm.
Yeah, and in my case, I think when I when I was still single, for sure, yes, in that romantic setup when you realize that something is just not going to work out and you don't really have a relationship with a person. Yeah, definitely. I've just ignored communication, and maybe because I didn't want the confrontation. But later in my life, and more recently, I started to really put up strong boundaries for myself. And especially if I express those boundaries, I tend to, when people who knows how I feel about certain situations keep on pushing my buttons, I ghost. And I do that guilt free. I just don't respond. And in that sense, ghosting has been a really positive thing in my life because I'm not going to be dragged in to things that I know it's not serving me. It's negative. It's not, it's yeah. In that sense, I feel quite proud of ghosting. So it's kind of a positive spin on ghosting. And
Mhm.
yeah, I've had to put up very strong boundaries for myself over the last few years of certain things I just will not tolerate in my life anymore in certain relationships. And so when they do come up and when they do challenge me, I literally turn my back and walk away. And I don't communicate. I ignore. I have, in that sense, also blocked people who became very confrontational with me. I don't need this.
Mhm. And Marina, I think that's that is protection as well,
Oh yeah.
because if a person has a repeated pattern of confrontation, and you know, in a sense, they are dangerous.
Mhm.
They're dangerous to who you are, uh, emotionally, spiritually. If they're dangerous to that and they have made no gains at all in personal growth and changing who they are or how they interact with you, I think it is the best recourse
Oh yeah.
because um, there are times when enough is enough and blocking or refusing to answer the phone calls or however it is
Right,
that we
right.
are ghosting them is for our own protection. And I think that in that situation, yeah, totally ghosting and avoidance is the only recourse because we can only control ourselves. We can't control another human being. And if it gets to that point where it's detrimental to
Mhm.
our own being, then
Yeah.
ghosting is
And
necessary.
Fran, we live in such weird, interesting times, and we have this thing called social media today. And I find even yesterday, I had this weird message from a man on social media, and it started my social media is Facebook specifically is quite private. Some of the other platforms not as much, but he made on one of my public posts that is related to a podcast that I did. He made a comment on that, and I didn't respond. I just did a like to it, but then he came back and said, "Okay, he can promote me, and if I pay him this much money." And no, thank you. Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
And in situations like that, when you do run your own business, and especially in the field that we are in, I find that there are so many people that target us, and you cannot respond to everybody, and everybody wants a few cents from you. I even had a phone call today where a lady said, "Oh, it's this and this and this network, and congratulations, your application was approved." I said, "What application?" "No, we're pretty sure you applied to be part of our network, and it will cost you this much per month in membership." Like, definitely not. Thank you very much. Take me off your call list. Thank you so much. So in that case, I didn't ghost. I just expressed that no, this is not working for me.
And I think you have made a point there, Marina. I think with social media and the ability to swipe, right? It's so simple
Mm-hmm,
just to
mm-hmm.
swipe right, swipe left, especially, it's just so quick. It's a flick of the finger that um, being ghosted as a ghostee is so much more prevalent because people are just so used to swiping, swipe, delete, swipe, delete, swipe, delete. So, so I think people are becoming more, less empathetic. I think less. uh, less able to really empathize with the person who's being ghosted. So, this whoever it is that's contacting you for money, or you've won, right? It's always you've won something, blah blah blah. Um, we see it so much. There's so much of it
Oh
everywhere
yeah.
that we become so hardened. Um, and so, and I hate to say it, but this person who's offering you money, uh, and and now somebody else, they're just kind of all part of the emails, right?
Mm.
It's like there's an important email, but then there's all these terrible, uh, money grabbing emails, and I'm just one more email, or I'm just one more social media message, or I'm just one more of the growing list of email baggage that we all collect, after we've had the same email for many years.
Yeah, I
So,
call it information overload. It's just so
right.
much of it.
Yes. And so I think it's easier to ghost people, ghost emails, ghost text messages,
Mhm.
ghost social media messaging sites, because there are just so much inundation with people wanting, wanting, wanting.
So
So,
let's streamline this a little bit, Fran, and go back to specifically ghosting, because I think when it really hurts is when relationships are involved. And I mean, young people, it can become, I don't know if you've ever had very young clients, but I've worked with a few teenage clients, and it's really a thing for them. If they've been ghosted either by a friend or by a potential boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, it's really painful. So how do you deal with it?
mhm. And I think that I hate to say it, but girls are especially bad for ghosting other girls. This feeling of invisibility, that they don't even exist.
Mhm.
Um, Girls are bad. Guys, I think guys tend to be more aggressive, assertive, but girls are so passive aggressive that, yes, for girl teenagers, girls, young adults, it's horrible. And so for those clients, I think it's really important to get to the root of why it hurts so much. And usually the reason that hurts so much was something happened to them when they were younger, um, being rejected on the playground, or not being able to participate in something that was going on with your siblings or cousins or something like that because you were too little, and called a crybaby or something. There's always some event or events from when they were little that really triggers just this emotional sadness, this deep depression when they get ghosted or treated that way when they're older.
Yeah, it's almost a passive aggressive way of bullying in situations like that. And for me, I find that one of the most important things is, even in a young person, is help them understand their value so that they can rise above that messaging, whether it is the passive aggressive ignoration or the real verbal bullying, to be able to know their value, know their worth to the extent where they can just absolutely rise above that. And if a young person can master that, man, I have so much hope for them. But mostly we work with older people. So it's to go back and restore that in them. And I mean, how many clients do you have who sit in front of you with so much pain from those specific years when they were the recipient of this now passive aggressive bullying and being ignored, being pushed out of a friendship group, being ignored? It's extremely painful, and it all goes back to self-worth. So we now have the job to help them understand that they can heal from that, that they can even now go back and heal those wounds and see it in a new and different perspective and from a healthier point. And that's actually quite beautiful to see.
Yeah. And one of the techniques I like to use is when we find out what the underlying issue was, the underlying events, the underlying scenes, is to have one of the people that were passive aggressive, or that bully, the bully um, imagined in front of them, and they as me, and they get to tell the bully exactly how they felt and how wrong it was and how much better that they, how strong and capable and beautiful and the personally they are, and allow the bully to speak, right? To speak in response. And it's very healing for the client to be able to address it with the person, even if it's just me. And I'm the person that they can respond to, and share that with them in a way that's so freeing. And they get rid of a lot of stuff by being able to do that. So in bullying situations, or passive aggressive, or ghosting, or whatever it is, some of the techniques we use are very powerful.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. To me, it's just there are so many different things that's built into the work that we do, from what you refer to as, we know it as the dialogue with the person that has hurt you. And to me, I love the upgrading that child, or even just the person on a spiritual level, to help them see themselves through the eyes of Source. And it's just beautiful to see them light up like a Christmas tree and just see their own value. And just, it's almost like putting new glasses on and looking through new lenses at life. And suddenly life looks beautiful and different and positive. And it's really part of the work that we do that I love the most, is to see that transformation in people.
Oh, definitely. And one of the techniques what you also use is being your own cheerleader, and
Mm.
just giving that person the words, right? You are beautiful, you are strong, you are important, you make a difference. You need to be here in the world because we need you in this world. That being the cheerleader for themselves, when they've carried this kind of baggage with them for years and years and sometimes decades, to be able to hear that, to be able to say that to themselves, to be able to believe it, because under hypnosis, it's so powerful. The the freeing that you can get, the understanding and the realization, it's so powerful.
Yes, yes, and again, when it comes to ghosting, outside of the event that happens that involves another personal persons, it is your interpretation of it that in the end makes the difference. And if you, as a young person who is in a situation of being ghosted, can tell yourself right then and there, it's none of my business. They are going through stuff. It's not mine. I'm not owning this. I'm not taking it personally. I'm just ignoring it.
Mhm,
The entire story will change.
mhm,
Unfortunately, it's not the way it always works.
mhm. You're
I wish
right.
there was a guideline for that. I wish you can truly help people to understand that they don't have to take it personally.
Mhm. And that's the thing, right? Because this other human being has their own stuff going on. And 99.9% of the time, it has nothing to do with us.
Mhm.
Nothing. But yeah, but it's a conversation that for both the ghoster and the ghostee to understand that neither are bad, neither. So if I am a person who tends to ghost others, it doesn't mean I'm bad. It doesn't mean that I have defects. It just means that I have childhood patterns that I need to continue to be conscious of all the time. I need to be conscious of my own childhood pattern. And if I can make myself conscious and if I can make myself do the work, the hard stuff, to face the confrontation, to actually talk about my feelings and how that things have impacted me and to move on, it would save a whole lot more pain and guilt for myself, as well as pain and heartache, perhaps, for the person who's being ghosted.
Well, I'm going to quote from one of my favorite books again. I've done this many times. The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, which says the second agreement is don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. So, being the victim and feeling like a victim when you are being ghosted is needless suffering. And understanding this gives you choice, the choice to be immune to it, the choice to say, I am not taking it personally, I'm immune to it. That's none of my business. That person is going through something that they are trying to reflect on me, but they're only reflecting themselves. I'm not taking it personally. And immediately you take the sting out of this. You are eliminating needless suffering, and that is just beautiful.
I agree. And I have a quote, and it's by the philosopher Alan Watts. And he says, the more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless. So the longer we extend that ghosting of somebody else, the more lifeless it has. So let's not do that. Let's shorten that time frame up. Let's address the issue as quickly as we can so that both people can move on and both people can continue to heal in whatever way that looks like for them, for themselves.
For sure. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Where's the hope?
Where's the hope? The hope is, I think, to continue to acknowledge that I am a good person. I am a good person, whether I have ghosted in the past, or whether somebody's ghosting me. I am a good person. Let's look at this situation and decide how we're going to proceed consciously rather than allow the unconscious to take over and create within you some kind of disharmony for whatever reason. Become conscious of what you do or how you react so you can change. And each little tiny step is a step on the journey of healing. So whether it takes until you're 100 years old, it doesn't matter. Each tiny step is a step in the right direction.
I accidentally muted myself. Sorry. Yeah.
I was like, I'm trying to read your lips.
So for me, it's just that don't take anything personally. Doesn't matter if it's ghosting or if somebody's lashing out at you. Don't take it personally.
Yeah.
You will save yourself from a lot of needless suffering.
Mhm.
Be
Well,
kind to
Marina,
yourself at all
thank
times.
you. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about ghosting and in honor of Halloween, I
There you go.
hope you don't get ghosted.
Well, in the Halloween way, I'm prepared to have a lot of little ghosts and goblins at my house. So, in that terms, I will be welcoming ghosting. But in the other way, you can ghost me all you want. I'm not letting it in.
Good job. Well,
Okay.
everyone, thanks for being here.
Thank you
And
for joining us.
yeah, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please pass it on to a friend and remember to subscribe.
I'll see you next time with more hope.
Bye.